Welcome to a new day. Who am I? I am Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv, where we do awesome FileMaker training, and I have my ace hitter here helping me today. Hello, Christian Olson.
How we doing?
Well, you got to hit that unmute button a little faster, Chief. We've got to be right on the money, baby. So we are broadcasting in 1080 high definition. So if you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, feel free to adjust your resolution setting to a higher number. I have talked to some of you. Some of you have kind of really bad internet connections, and so you can't really stream or interact. And so all I can say is maybe watch the recording or set the resolution low, but you really can't see the code when you set the resolution really low. So today is an interesting conversation. I want to just, it's an open Q&A day, but we're going to have some fun today. Once again, reminder that our training largely focuses on, different groups and different target audiences per se, I will say. So we have business owners, we have brand new FileMaker developers, we have intermediate developers, and we have senior FileMaker developers who can just code in their sleep while they're, unconscious. They're still coding in their minds. Very cool stuff. What I want to do real quick is talk about this access versus, and this came up with something I said the other day, and someone was talking about this, but really the difference between access and FileMaker. So if you see this table right here, this view, this is called table view on my screen. It doesn't really matter what it says so much, other than it's kind of this, it's like a spreadsheet, right? And FileMaker literally made table view to make things more, I don't know, what would be the word, more friendly feeling for Excel people, because they were trying to get a lot of Excel people to move to FileMaker. This is back about 6-7 years ago, not that long ago, of marketing, and this was his thing. He had to have this. And so at the time, they should have been pivoting it into cloud. Instead, they were worried about this. So they just always get there. They just always get there a little late. So the idea with the Excel spreadsheet is that it's basically columns of information that you can total and do all sorts of really neat stuff with. It's really great for accountants who want to have a list of numbers and play mathematical games with the numbers on screen. FileMaker is more about an application, because understand that FileMaker is not just this data. I mean, clearly this is part of it, but with FileMaker, it's got multiple pieces. It's got an under the hood component. It has a graphical interface component. And so when you're explaining this to people, you need to make sure, just take starting point or pretty, and explain to them that FileMaker, this is not Excel. Excel could not do this. This also will share with 500 people if you needed to, or more if you put money into it. Excel won't do that. I did point out that as a general rule, one of the biggest issues is that FileMaker, after you build an app, you can share it immediately with other people and preview it, right? Or share it with other people and then share it ad hoc, or share it peer-to-peer, or share it on the server. Excel, as a general rule, doesn't share. Now, one of you said, oh yeah, but I'm using Google Sheets, and Google Sheets has the ability to share the data. So if you change the data here, it changes it over there. Okay, literally that's a great feature for an Excel spreadsheet, but in terms of record locking, record management, even in Excel you can code. I've seen some apps, people almost built an entire app in Excel because they were really power users and they got into Excel and they were trying to do it. And Excel has these macros. In the rest of the world, we call them programming, and in FileMaker, they call them scripts. So they're blocks of code, which is a script or a macro in the world of Excel. And so the idea is that this is, in the world you live in, fundamentally Excel and Sheets, this is what it does. It doesn't build applications which takes the data and displays it many different ways for mobile devices and everything else like that. It's not designed like that. You could actually build a FileMaker application and not have any. Well, you'd have to have one table, I guess, and I guess to a point, one table, no records would be the minimum you'd have to have. As soon as you do a lot of things, you need to have a record you're on. But the reality is that I've had apps that I wanted to build in FileMaker that didn't store or organize data. We just needed a presentation interface. So there's a product called LiveCode. So LiveCode is a great example of what happens when you take a FileMaker front end with the presentation interface with some coding, and you remove the data engine out of it. That's what LiveCode is. It works on Mac, Windows, Linux, Android, iPhone. It compiles. I built an application in the Apple App Store years ago, and We built the Mac one in titanium, which was a disaster. And then we built the Android one in LiveCode, which actually worked pretty good. I had a mid-level guy at the time who built it. Miles at the time, he was a mid-level engineer. He got into LiveCode, built an application one on the App Store. I would have preferred to have used FileMaker, but FileMaker doesn't. Even today, if you go to them and say, hey, I want to build an app, put it on the App Store, they're like, use something else. They really don't want to. They don't want to do that. They don't want to say yes to that. I have no idea why. I think that they don't see a lot of revenue attached to that. They should find a way of charging for that, and then making that available. But the point is that they make it available for free in the iOS app SDK, but it doesn't work on Android. It does here and here. So I needed an Android and Mac app or iPhone app, and so LiveCode is like all the graphical interface of FileMaker without the data backend data system on it. So that's. Yeah, talking to people about why use FileMaker. Basically, fundamentally, it has a huge ecosystem. There's 1 million people that use it a day, every day. Not developers, users. Fire up applications worldwide. It's in use everywhere in every company, even Fortune 500. FileMaker, like say, it's in 80 or 90% of the Fortune 500 companies. I guarantee it's in use at 100% of the Fortune 500 companies, but it might be guerrilla warfare where only certain groups are doing it kind of stealthily. Because sometimes IT groups don't like it. You'll have IT groups that are pro-Microsoft, or you'll have IT groups that are not pro-Microsoft, they'll be like pro-Oracle or some other big irons kind of systems like that. You'll have pro-AWS shops, this kind of thing. And so FileMaker is kind of this weird... FileMaker, Claris would tell you right now that they've now decided it's an enterprise tool. They spent the last 30 years trying to explain to everyone it was not an enterprise tool. Now, starting in February this year, they started talking about it's an enterprise tool. It depends. I think it kind of is, but comparing it to like Oracle is like misleading. But FileMaker is an interesting product. So it has the data engine, it has the data backend, the data engine to manage the data. So that's like your Excel-ish kind of part of it. And it has a graphical interface. Then it has this entire business logic, which is basically your scripting environment where you can write code in here that does stuff. And it's organized to share in a high capacity, share with a lot of people. So someone says, well, what's the difference between Access and FileMaker? And so that's a really good question. One off, Access is designed as an ad hoc tool, not for serious production use. It says on their website, at least they used to say it on their website, that if you're using Access and you're going to seriously use it in kind of a live production environment, they want you to upgrade to Microsoft SQL. Because I guess there's a way you can kind of segue from Access to SQL. There's some sort of migration on that or something. And so what's interesting is that, yeah, so David says it's a rapid application development tool with its own database engine. Yeah, I mean, you can call it that if you want. I mean, some people say it's low code or no code, but that's crap. It can be no code if you want to drag and drop, but it's got a lot of code in it. It can do a lot of code. It's not required. It's always kind of funny with Claris how they explain this, and I'm kind of all over the place. But like 2 years ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, Claris was all about it's a workplace innovation platform. In fact, you still see that on our videos, right? And now the new management team has come in February, and they were part of this previously. I don't hear them talk about the workplace innovation platform at all. Zero. When they communicate with us, now they have some new marketing lingo. Power to the problem solver. So instead of the workplace innovation platform, it's power to the problem solvers. It's like I said, it's a rapid. What you have to do when you're talking to people is find out what they know, what they understand, what their biases are, and then craft the message to that. What does it do for you? Why do you want to use FileMaker? My suggestion for you and a team, if you're trying to get FileMaker to be adopted, is to find some low-hanging fruit, something easy for FileMaker to go and kill. So something that is driving the management team insane. They hate it. It doesn't work correctly, and you can solve it in a day or two or half a day of work or something with FileMaker and show that to them. What you don't want to do, like the low-hanging fruit, would not be, I want to integrate a new invoicing system with QuickBooks. Okay, that's not low-hanging fruit. That's fruit that's 80, 90 feet up in the air, and you need a rickety ladder to get up there. Okay, it's not something you're going to do with time pressure because you're trying to impress people. It needs to work basically out of the gate the first time or pretty close to it, and you need to demonstrate how easy it was for you to build, and then what the ROI, what is your return on investment. When you talk to Claris, it's things I really agree with them on. It's fundamental. You have to make the case about return on investment. If you are going to buy a say a 5-pack of FileMaker on the low end is about $800 or $900 a year. Okay, that's without the cloud service, just the software license. If you're trying to solve a problem that costs the company $200 a year, that makes no sense. What? Why? Why? Just use Excel or use a Post-it note or something, right? Anyway, yeah, so great points. One of the best reasons to choose FileMaker is they're going to adopt your business process, not proprietary software. Well, and that's another conversation. That's another way. Christian points out a great, and I'm going to come back to YouTube here. We'll answer some questions here, but Christian points out a great point, is that some people come at it from like Excel is like this open-ended, Excel is like going into the remember we always talk about you go into the hardware store or like IKEA where there's pre-built modules, and then the hardware store with all the tools, and that's kind of FileMaker and IKEA together is what FileMaker 19 is, if you know what those are, like Home Depot and IKEA if you put them together. If you went into the hardware store and you're restricted to 1 or 2 aisles in the hardware store, that's Excel. Okay, that really is. Now, if you go to Salesforce or QuickBooks, then those are pre-canned applications. So imagine that you go to FM starting point and it's locked down and you can't change it, and it's $85 a month per user per month, and it scales to 100. You have 10 to 20,000 people using it overnight. Like if you have 10,000 salespeople, you can roll this out to all 10,000 tomorrow. Okay, that's what Salesforce is. It's a canned CRM. It's got more features than starting point, but the point is it's a canned CRM. And it's based on a web application, and it's kind of very hard to customize it compared to FileMaker or a lot of other tools. It's very difficult. You can get consultants to do that, but you have to get legitimate, serious programmers, right? And deal with those people, and then customize it. But it's not cheap. It's easily at any given time at least double more than FileMaker, and most time it's like 3 or 4 times or 5 times the cost of FileMaker on a per user per month basis. But it comes with a CRM that's functional. Now, does the CRM work the way you want to? That's what Christian's talking about here. Christian Jesse is talking about the idea that it's canned and you have to do things its way. Now, a lot of people say, I have my business or I have my department within an organization. Like if I worked at Apple, I'd have some department with 20 or 30 people, and we're going to do the things the Apple way, but it's kind of like this custom process. Well, then you build a FileMaker application that custom fits and supports your process. Salesforce, it doesn't really work that way. You have to kind of work the way it does. QuickBooks, you want a jarring realization. Talk to the IRS and talk to your accountants. They don't want you inventing new ways of doing math. That's called creative bookkeeping, right? It can potentially lead you to jail if you're good at it. If you're really good at creatively, doing things, right? And so in a QuickBooks system, they want it to work specifically the same way every time, and it's not negotiable. That's QuickBooks. And for accounting and money, you kind of get that. And because QuickBooks you can pull reports out, submit them to the government, not just the U.S. government, governments all around the world. And so you don't want the flexibility in there. So that's where it's good. But in other systems like sales systems, project management systems, you want flexibility, and that's what Jesse was talking about. So Scott was saying that he was using Salesforce. He's actually, I think, segueing back to FileMaker. If I remember the story correctly about Scott, he's a Skane 101 on Twitch, and he's saying it created more work for him. So let me go over to, he's totally right. Nothing to argue about there. I'm going to go over to YouTube over here, looking at YouTube. Bunny's here. She's commenting about Christian pixelated. There is a way to move data back and forth between FileMaker and Excel. You can use an ODBC driver. You can do some other things with it. Pretty interesting. Cockeyed optimist. I always say optimist. I think it's optometrist, I think, supposed to be. Love FileMaker. The difference is that Access has never crashed on my computer. FileMaker always does. And that's a good point. Visual Fox Pro was Microsoft's competitor FileMaker. They ended that years ago. Here's the other thing with Access. I didn't get to this. Let me explain this. It's very important. I don't think Access has structurally changed very much over the years. I did testing on it years ago. And for starters, there's no server version of Access. So when you do Access and you do sharing, it's peer-to-peer sharing. That's that stuff that we say is really bad because there's no automatic backups, etc. Okay? So Access has basically a peer-to-peer only mode, and they say, well, if you want anything serious in production, that's why you take it to Microsoft SQL. Then you write a big check, and it's a lot more complexity. Here's the other thing about access. So this is really important how FileMaker works. I don't have a diagram here, but let me explain this to you. I really need a diagram. I don't have a diagram. Okay, I'm just gonna have to wave my hands here. So everyone have to put up with my hand waving. So here's the deal with this. So with access, if you have with FileMaker server, if you have a server here, and you have these clients here, when these clients log on, the server sends to them just the data they need. Now, if you have a millions of records and 15 gigabyte database, which is not uncommon, the client, you can't send 15 gigs to the user. It would be waiting all day for it to load. And so it sends you just the layouts you need, the records you need, the schema that you need to know. And FileMaker even about caching issues a couple week or two ago. And so that's important to understand. So FileMaker is smart. It's what they call client server. In a client server model, the server sends to the client just what it needs, right? With access, I actually got out the stopwatch and had the measuring equipment out, and when you would open up one access file from another access file, it would send the entire file to the other person. So if it was a tiny file, that was fine. If it was a big file, it sent the whole thing to the person. If they're on the local network, maybe that's okay. If they're across the internet, right? Are you going to send, every time someone logs in, you want to send them even a 100 megabyte file? How long would that take? Open a file? Oh, a minute or two, 3 minutes. If you got Christian's internet, it'd be like half a day. Yeah, so I was kind of answering these questions about access, etc., and the way it operates. And I've done tests on that. So you want a legitimate client-server application. That's what Microsoft SQL does. MySQL does that. Oracle does that. FileMaker does that. Access doesn't do that. So Access is kind of this free thing. So people always like, oh, I love free, until it doesn't scale, or Microsoft says you should not use it in a production environment. It literally says that on their website. You can dig it up. People are like, that doesn't say that. Yeah, well, it used to. Within 5 years ago, it said that. I haven't checked their website lately, but I don't, because remember, it's free. So what would Microsoft's interest be? They want you to pay, whether truthful or not, they want you to pay some money, right, for Microsoft MS SQL, right? So cool. Okay, so the cockeyed optometrist is talking about, have you seen problems with Windows lately? I mean, it's kind of hit and miss with Windows. It seems like it works really well, Christian, and then it quits working really well. And then people get wrapped around the axle about it. What's your thought process on FileMaker and Windows? Is it good or not good, or what's the deal with that?
I think it depends. I mean, I've had issues with FileMaker crashing on my own computer, especially with certain plugins have gotten installed. So I think with Windows, where things are more prone is you have Mac. Apple is just so big about controlling everything under the hood, so there's less collisions. But on Windows, since there's so much stuff out there, it's easy to install something that could have a system level collision with it. So most of my customers that are on Windows really do not have issues. I don't hear much of it crashing. So I can't speak to there being like a, this universe, it's across the board with Windows is crashing. But at different times, different computers, I've heard of issues with crashing.
Yeah, David, I did have a point about, we're talking about all these topics that come up. Once again, my suggestion is figure out the people you're talking to, what their biases are, what they know, right? Like if they know QuickBooks, they know Salesforce, then you can have a conversation about that if they know other tools. But understanding the FileMaker where it fits is really important. I was going to say, David said for QuickBooks, you have to adapt the software. Yeah, so we found this out when we integrated Starting Point. I'd never really had done a serious QuickBooks integration until we bolted it into Starting Point. That's Starting Point. And what ended up happening was we found out how brutally rigid QuickBooks is about how you create invoices, when they're out the door, they're locked down. You can't even and then even how they calculate taxes, like the sales tax on invoices, generally different than 99% of FileMaker developers and how they calculate it. We couldn't figure out the problem until we did the math a different way, and then we saw that there was a cascading set of rounding errors. And it's not so much that you could say QuickBooks is doing it right or wrong. I mean, they're obviously a much bigger company than I am, and so you would assume they're doing it right. But even if they were doing it wrong, they are the governmental accepted standard in a lot of places. So what are you going to do? Say, hey, is they're wrong and we're going to do it our way? Well, then you need to have attorneys ready to defend you when there's an audit and they say you overpaid or underpaid or whatever you did. Nathan Schneider says, using Microsoft Access was an issue for me because also had to install on a server, purchase terminal services licenses. Microsoft Access community was not helpful as a FileMaker community. Yeah, the interesting thing with FileMaker, because of its interface and because of its history, and I would say parts of Claris get this and parts of Claris, I mean, they might get it, but they don't really appreciate it. And that is the fact that if you go to the serious FileMaker developers, a vast majority of them are very creative individuals. They are, you can go to them and there's certain like weird like little things they do. Like for example, if you go to FileMaker, you take 100 FileMaker developers, you ask them how many speak a foreign language or play a musical instrument or are painting or an artist or some sort of like grossly creative thing like that. It'll be like 80%. Or 90%. It's a really, really high number, way higher than what you would normally get across base of, you know, the population of an area. I'm not sure foreign languages comes into it, but that's also part of it too. And maybe it's that you have to have a creative brain. I don't speak a foreign language besides burrito or something, you know. I feel like Beavis and Butthead, for those of you, I grew up with that stuff, and they were like, hey, what, you know any Spanish? El taco, right? You know, I mean, stupid stuff, right? So I know no other languages, but I play horn and do some other creative stuff. And so when you go to people, and it's almost historically. So Christian, test question, I don't know that you do anything like that. You go out and do sports and stuff. Do you have a creative side to you somewhere?
Me? Absolutely.
Yes. What is that?
That's one of the things I love about FileMaker. FileMaker is my creative outlet. I can't draw. My artistic skills suck in that way. Mm-hmm. My music skills suck, but I love to be creative. When I was a kid, building things with Legos, the ability to create things.
Okay.
I get an incredible enjoyment out of it. So for me, FileMaker has become my canvas to be able to make things that are creative, and I love that. That
was really good BS. I have to write that down. FileMaker is my canvas to be creative. That's a really true statement. Did you just make that up, or did you read that somewhere just now?
I've said it multiple times because it is, you know, whether, you know, again, as a kid, Legos, erector sets, FileMaker, writing a script that does something reminds me of that. But then it's really cool putting something on screen that looks beautiful. Now, where Nick can just build something from scratch and make it look beautiful, I'm not great at that, but I can take themes and other examples that look good and continue to make them look good or better. But I usually need a little something to start with. If you give me the blank canvas, I do know where my skill set lies in trying to build a beautiful layout on try number one.
Yeah, but IMOG, did we answer your question? I mean, it's generally this client server. It's sharing only the data to the network you need to. It's a data backend, a graphical front end, coding that provides your business logic or business workflow. It's this I would say an established ecosystem of developers, right? And basically what you're finding is that the people who are creative naturally like FileMaker because they can, Christian said it best, is that they use it, that way they get to have a little bit of canvas and a little bit of creativity in their day job. I would not really want to, I mean, I love FileMaker, but I could think of one or two other things I would do during the day besides FileMaker, right? Although if I'm in FileMaker and I'm creating something new, then I kind of enjoy that because that's that creative process. That's your canvas. That's really good. Damn, that's really good, Christian. We make you a commercial for Claris. All right, other questions now. Let's just talk briefly about upcoming fun and mayhem. So once again, there we go. Stand by. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This broadcast is brought to you by FMTraining.tv, where you get great FileMaker training at a really great price. Visit FMTraining.tv or contact your closest representative at support@rcconsulting.com. Also, if you need some FileMaker coaching, you need to talk to the coaching team at RCC. They'll even give you a free hour of FileMaker coaching. That is available to you at fmcoaches.com, or you can email support@rcconsulting.com. Just stay safe, be happy, and build awesome FileMaker apps. Because you know why? At the end of the day, the reason we do this is because the world needs great custom applications. They need you to build great applications, and FileMaker is your creative canvas for doing that. Cool. And that's it for today. If you have any questions about anything FileMaker 19 otherwise, you need a coach, you need training, you want to file a complaint, tell them that you spent way too much money on today's training. Send your complaints to support@rcconsulting.com, and we'll catch you tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
And the guys just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected, the quarterback. Great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and snacks a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.